Hi, my name is Darren Mish, and I'm a tax attorney with an international tax problem resolution practice based in Tampa, Florida. What I'm going to do today is make this short video from a very intelligent question that I received on the blog, and so it goes like this. Hello, Mr. Mish. I've read several of your blogs and articles regarding non-filers. I'm a financial education teacher for men and women in transitional housing. Due to the nature of their background, most of the participants in my classes have either never filed or have not filed in a long time. I would say that many of them probably fall below the taxable income level, but some probably should have filed. Now that these folks are trying to get back on the straight and narrow, what will happen when they begin to file? Here's one of my examples. A woman waited tables and reported some of her tips. She said she definitely made less than $20,000 a year, but she's not sure how much. I'm contacting the Social Security Administration to obtain information about that, and I believe we will do a records request from the IRS via the Freedom of Information Act as you suggested. She's not really worried about if she owes, but it's the fear of not knowing what will happen that keeps her frozen. You know what I mean? Another of my students has never in her life filed taxes. She's 39. I have no idea what her income situation was, but I will do the same records request for her. This is very common for people who work very little, are very low income, and or are battling drug addictions. I don't expect perfect answers to any of my questions, but any suggestions would be extremely appreciated. I will also be referring them to pro bono tax attorneys in our area once we've gathered some information for them to go on. Thanks for any help, comments, or suggestions. Listen, I think that was a great question. Thanks a lot for submitting it. This type of situation is really super common, so I'm glad you asked. Generally speaking, wage earners must earn a minimum amount before they are required to file a tax return. The amount of earnings changes every year, so you're going to want to check that out for each individual tax year. The amount is $8,950 of earned income from wages anyway for tax year 2008 and typically goes up a little each year. Non-filers, meaning people who haven't filed tax returns in many years, can have quite an undertaking on their hands. The story usually goes something like this. I skipped a year and nothing happened, then 1 year became 2, and so on. Now it's been 10 years and I haven't filed a tax return. What do I do? The simple answer is that the crime of failure to file a tax return carries a statute of limitations for the crime of 6 years. What's that mean? It means, generally speaking, that if the government doesn't prosecute you within that time frame, they can't anymore. For this reason, we typically advise our clients to prepare and file the last 6 to 7 years of returns. The earlier ones, they simply get away with. Next, how to obtain the necessary information to file such old returns. Well, you touched upon one method. If the taxpayer was a wage earner, oftentimes the Social Security Administration will have records that are relatively easy to obtain. You can access Social Security's website at ssa.gov. There should be some information there on how to obtain these records. Second, you can always call the IRS at 1-800-829-1040 and ask them to send you a record of account. I don't usually like this method because it has a tendency to speed things up. The IRS will likely start to ask a lot of questions about where the taxpayer works, where do they live, where do they bank, etc. Not really my idea of flying under the radar, if you know what I mean. Lastly, you can file a Freedom of Information Act request, which is actually beyond the scope of this video. I really don't have time to explain it here. But that's it, really. If you're dealing primarily with wage earner type folks, people who had taxes withheld from their paychecks, they probably don't have a problem at all. In all likelihood, the IRS would have owed them money for each year. There is one catch in late filing for someone who should have gotten a tax refund, though. If the refund return is filed more than 3 years late, the taxpayer forfeits the refund and credit for the refund. In other words, if some years are balances due and some are refunds, if the refunds are more than 3 years late, they will not offset those liabilities. I know it's not fair, but that's something you can raise with your congressman or your senator. So that's it. Hopefully these suggestions help your clients and the thousands of folks who end up seeing this video. I'm Darren Mish, and for everyone here at the firm, I'd like to remind you, IRS problems don't solve themselves.